Israeli anti-war protesters have been cracked down dramatically on, to the point of being arrested and others. Meanwhile, for days now, there has been a protest to stop humanitarian aid that was actually going into Gaza that is being openly allowed by the government and even visited by them. So here is a news report from inside of Israel on an English Israeli news channel that spotlights some of this. Let's take a listen.
We're going to interview some of them that we can try and find to talk to, some of them who came out, but they're members from all different sides of the Israeli political spectrum. They say they're from the right, they're people from the left, they're religious, they're secular. Some of them are families of hostages, but all coming out for the simple goal of trying to stop humanitarian aid. So Shoshana, do you want to join me and tell us a little bit about why you came out here today, why it's important for you to come here and protest? Why do you think they need to stop this aid?
Well, all the aid that's going in is going straight to Hamas. It's just supporting the terrorists. I don't see any reason to support terrorism. Nobody wants that. We just want our hostages home. We want to stop Hamas. I don't understand why that's a problem.
That's really the argument that she's making. It's pretty clear also. I wonder where that lady's from, though, by the way. Korean kind of curious accent.
I love the way that that news presenter, too, portrays this like some, heartwarming coming together of all factions of Israeli society to starve the children of Gaza. Even the Israeli government does not claim that all the aid is going to Hamas. They have said, and I don't even think that this is accurate, but at most 10% of the aid is being intercepted by Hamas. At most 10%. And we're not talking about missiles. We're talking about basic foodstuffs, water, maybe formula, milk, flour, sugar, things, that are absolutely essential at a time when the majority of the people in the Gaza Strip are literally starving. Every single person there is in a food hunger crisis, the worst by far in the world. And all sectors of Israeli society coming together to block any of this aid to get it to the starving children of the Gaza Strip. But just to give you a little bit of a sense of the flavor of these protests, we have some video we can show you where they're talking about how they're thinking about what they're doing, which is insane. And then we have a video that we'll show you as well of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who's visiting some of the IDF reservists in uniform who are telling them how much they support these efforts to block the aid. And by the way, they also say, hey, don't be scared about resettling the Gaza Strip, which is, another subject of much conversation with the Israeli domestic audience. So here you can see a little bit of video of some of the protesters, walking up to the protest. They say the trucks you see here before you are full of flour bags and sugar. When you mix this up with fertilizer, you get explosives, which are used for the rocket warheads and the rocket fuel. What you're looking at is not humanitarian aid. It is military munitions. What we call flour or sugar, to them, it's explosives. Now, this is the reservist. He says, don't be afraid of occupation, no aid, and no nothing. We are now going to block the trucks containing aid. So, getting a very clear picture of some of the sentiment from the soldiers charged with this military operation in the Gaza Strip, and Yoav Gallant, hearing this directly from them. Saagar, what did you make of those videos and also the idea that flour and sugar to starving Palestinians, that's actually rocket fuel, it's actually explosives. That's how they think about flour and sugar as their children are literally starving to get to death.
I thought I'd seen a lot growing up during the Iraq War, and it turns out I didn't see shit. And that's like a pretty crazy thing to think about. Like, I grew up thinking that Donald Rumsfeld was the actual devil, and that George W. Bush and all these other people were some of the worst people who would ever live, and had since Robert McNamara and the other people who got us into Vietnam. But this is, listen, if anything, it just confirms that history certainly does repeat itself, and that a lot of the, the things within the human character are easily replicable, and that you should never take that for granted whenever you enter a new age. So yeah, that's just the only way I could look at it. It's just crazy. I think what's crazy to me, in general, the way the Israelis have conducted themselves, is I just don't understand how they don't know that we live in a social media age, and that in the age of translation and others, every single thing you say is going to go viral, and the world and the critics and all of them will see it. So, sure, it hasn't had an impact in terms of U.S. policy, but that can't be the only thing that you care about. You know, people are going to remember this as dramatically changing politics here in the United States. So I don't know. Maybe they just don't care, which is a crazy thing, in my opinion, for a nation that literally relies on foreign direct investment and military aid from a global superpower. You should probably care how you're perceived in that country.
But they're completely used to acting with impunity and there being no consequences. I mean, when was the last time that there were really significant consequences? This is the result. I mean, that brazen nature of, you know, all the IDF soldier TikToks and the rhetoric from every level of government up to and including Bibi Netanyahu, I think it's a direct outgrowth of the fact that the Biden administration from the beginning said, we don't care what you do. No red lines. Do what you need to do. We'll ship you the weapons. We'll expedite the weapons. We'll occasionally leak to the press about how upset we are, but we're not going to do anything about it. So, of course, they act with impunity and they let it all hang out. Speaking of which, this report from Haaretz about this Gaza resettlement conference, which just occurred in Israel and was attended by many Likud party members, senior Likud party members, and government cabinet ministers, is really something. You should really read all of it because the comments that were made, the brazen nature of them, the fact that, you know, some of the most insane psychos on the far right, I mean, they're hailed as heroes for these comments. So, I mean, that gives you another idea of why the comments are made, why this is all publicized. It's because it's popular among plenty of sects of Israeli society. This is bolstering the images of people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir every time that they thumb their nose at the U.S. and they say, we don't care that you don't want us to do ethnic cleansing. This is our plan and this is what we want to do. So put this up on the screen from Haaretz. The headline here, the people of Israel will settle Gaza. Netanyahu's ministers at far-right conference endorse expulsion of Palestinians. Keep this up for a second because they have one of the quotes in here that was completely insane. They say, voluntary immigration is at times a situation you impose until they give their consent. That was according to Netanyahu's communications minister, who said this on stage to cheers and applause, exposing the true message of the Conference for the Victory of Israel, the transfer or expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza. In this report, they talk about how there were many different ideas for how Gaza could be resettled. Saagar, there was something for every potential settler here to get behind. One offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take part in the rebuilding of the Jewish city of Gaza as a green technological city, open to all and uniting all sections of Israeli society. Ethnic cleansing using like liberal, lefty language is really quite something to behold. They have a list of all of the ministers and Likud party members who were there. It was very well attended. Many people in power were there, cheering on the idea of ethnic cleansing and resettlement. They said the biggest response came for videos of soldiers in Gaza calling for the strip to be resettled, shouting out that there are no innocents, or photographing themselves with banners for the settlements that were previously dismantled. Ben-Gvir called for the execution of terrorist encouragement of what he terms emigration for Gazans. He says, we have already seen and understood that running away brings war. If we don't want another October 7th, we must return home and control the territory, as well as propose a Torah and halakhic, I don't know that word, logic, encouraging emigration for Gazans and the death penalty for terrorists. So this is totally contrary to U.S. government policy, supposedly anyway, official government policy. You'll recall, Saagar, that we felt compelled to at least put out some sort of a statement condemning the language of these ministers in the past. Clearly, without taking further action, this has not deterred them whatsoever. And it also, of course, comes after the ICJ specifically cited some very similar comments that were made as plausibly inciting genocide. Clearly, they do not care because the text of what they were saying and what was being cheered on here is absolutely wild.
Yeah, if you read this and you also couple it with some interesting comments that Gallant actually made today about security control over the West Bank, it seems that within the, within the allowable options, the best option, quote unquote, that seems to be politically realistic is just a return to the status quo, which is not something that the U.S. as ostensibly supports, which was Israeli security control over Gaza and no future government, Palestinian state, etc., which Netanyahu has ruled out. That seems to be the best one under option. The other option is this one. So this just, again, raises questions for the United States, where we've put sanctions in place on people, Israeli settlers specifically, taking action against or who have been supporting settlers and who have been attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, because it's contra to overall U.S. policy. I'm wondering, where is the simultaneous U.S. sanction in action on this part, if we do believe ostensibly in what the sustainable quote-unquote solution should look like afterwards. And, if something like this is just so brazen and so obvious, at a certain point you either endorse it or you don't. So they need to make that clear.
Yeah, and these people know what they want.
Yeah,
there's no
open.
Day after, what are we going to do? We're still thinking about, we're still figuring. No, they have maps of exactly where and when and how they would resettle Gaza and come in and, reinvade that land. They know exactly what they want to do. And that in and of itself is a very powerful thing, especially when you look at the Gaza Strip today and you realize it is uninhabitable. I mean, the northern part of the Gaza Strip in particular has been utterly destroyed. The civilian infrastructure, from universities to hospitals to schools to residential houses and apartments, it is decimated. So that's step one, is make it unlivable, push them south, push them south, push them south. Now you've got over 1 million Palestinians in Gaza sheltering in Rafah, right on the border, just one step further into the Egyptian desert. And these folks at this conference completely get their way and their goal of what they want to see for the Gaza Strip.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.